get us started. That's really the sign that we're actually starting. I encourage you all, we welcome, you're glad you're here. If you want to turn on your cameras, you certainly are welcome to do so. I love seeing people's faces, but it's certainly not required. Feel free to do whatever makes you most comfortable. And we are glad that you're here. The bulk of our time will be spent trying to answer questions that you all have pre-submitted, but please do make sure you make use of the chat as well. We encourage you to say hi to one another, introduce yourselves, let folks know where you're from in DeKalb County. You can say your neighborhood if you want, or we kind of know most of you all are from Georgia, so you don't have to include that part, but what city, what community, what neighborhood do you represent? Please feel free to make use of the chat to introduce yourself in that way. I want to begin by introducing my colleague who will be answering questions and really leading this conversation with me, Commissioner Steve Bradshaw, who is the commissioner who represents District 4, which is a district that I happen to also live in. So Commissioner Steve Bradshaw is my commissioner, as well as many of yours. And I'm Senator Kim Jackson. I serve District 41, which serves a large portion of DeKalb counties, including Stone Mountain, Tucker, Pine Lake, and then a portion of Gwinnett County, which includes the city of Lilburn. And we're just super glad to be here and to be able to have this conversation. Senator Bradshaw, would you like to offer words of greeting?
Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'll start by thanking my friend and colleague, Senator Kim Jackson, for the invitation to join her for this public meeting this evening. Honored to do so. Want to thank her team for their support. If I've got the names, Elizabeth, Fernando, and Sharon. Thank you all so much for your assistance. Obviously, I want to thank my team, Alicia and Carrie, for their assistance in pulling this together. And most of all, I want to thank you all as citizens for your engagement in this process. We work for you all, so it's good when we get to hear from you with regard to your thoughts and the things that are on your mind. Here in DeKalb County, we're in the throes of budget season, winding down the end of budget season. If all goes well, we'll approve a budget next Tuesday, and we can all take a little sigh of relief. But in the short run, let me just say that DeKalb County is in pretty good shape from a financial standpoint. And as questions arise, we could potentially go into specifics. But I look forward to this dialogue, and I yield back to my colleague, Senator Jackson.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner. I want to begin with just a little bit of a short legislative update for those of you who have following what's happening under the Gold Dome. We have some much more specific questions that I know you all have pre-submitted and that will come up that we'll answer. But I just want to give a kind of a high-level overview of what's happening down at the Capitol. Like Commissioner Bradshaw, we are working on budgets. That is our only constitutional duty that we must complete within these 40 days is to create a balanced budget for Georgia. So the House just passed their kind of version of the budget. And we will begin to look at that much more closely as a Senate in this week and in the weeks to come. Georgia is in a very healthy position in terms of finances, which is really good to be able to say, because for so many years we've been talking about cutting the budget and trying to find ways to tighten the belt. But this is an opportunity that we have now to actually refund some of the things that were defunded over the years. And so I think this will be a good opportunity for Georgia. We'll see kind of what the end goal will be. Time will tell that, but that's our main goal and objective during session right now. But because we are together, we don't just stop with the budget. As you all know, we like to tinker with some other laws as well down at the Capitol. So maybe I'll start with the highlights, the good things that we've done so far. The Senate passed out a bill that expands Medicaid for people who are postpartum through a whole year. So in Georgia, we had a 6 months for Medicaid for those who were postpartum, and now we're working to expand it. The Senate passed that unanimously. I foresee that happening as well in the House. And so this is a goal to help reduce the maternal mortality rate, which in Georgia is the highest actually in the nation right now. So the goal here is to expand Medicaid for postpartum in order to help reduce those rates. We also, out of the Senate, passed another bill that will help to do some expungement work for people who've been convicted of certain offenses. And so we're really excited about this. This is a really important criminal justice reform move that I think continues and furthers the work to give people essentially a second chance. And so there'll be a number of misdemeanors that will now be able to be sealed with a petition from a judge. And this bill kind of streamlines that process and makes it a little bit easier for more people to be able to receive their record expungement. We also just passed a mental health parity bill, which will allow to make sure that your insurance companies, if your insurance company cares for and provides for your physical health, and if they have certain rules for how you can access that in terms of pre-authorization and what your copay has to be, that they have to offer parity on the mental health side. That bill also passed unanimously out of the Senate, and so we're excited and hopeful about that. A few things that are coming down the pipeline. The biggest one of note as it relates to issues of mental health, which this is the year of mental health in the Senate and in the House. The HB 1013, if anybody has ever worked in the medical field, that number will sound familiar to you. 1013 is a code that we use when we are admitting somebody for psychiatric support. So HB 1013 is in the House right now. It is a comprehensive bill. It's a 74-page bill that really seeks to overhaul our mental health care system and delivery system. That has bipartisan support. It also has the Speaker's support along with the governor. And so I'm actually very, very optimistic about our ability to pass that. As you all know or may know, accessing mental health in Georgia is not the easiest thing to do. And so this bill will help to try to solve some of the workforce problems that we have in terms of just having people available to provide the care. It'll help cut down with some of the red tape as around getting access to that care. It'll address some of the issues around pay. Again, the health insurance copays and things like that will be a part of this. So it's a large omnibus bill that really does try to address some of the things that have made us end up being ranked 49th in the nation when it comes to mental health care deliveries. So we hope to no longer be 49th. When I was growing up, we used to say, thank God for Mississippi, because in South Carolina, Mississippi usually was the only one that was worse than us. And so here we are, people are saying, thank God for Georgia, because Georgia is so bad right now. So we want to get out of that place and address that. A few other things that are in the works that are kind of coming down the pipeline. We have been working really diligently around local redistricting bills. So you all maybe remember that in November, we were in session and we drew maps for Congress and maps for kind of state, House, and Senate. So now we are doing very localized focus maps on Board of Commissions and Board of Education across the state. And so that's a lot of time is being dedicated to that. And then perhaps from a personal side, just to say a few things that I'm working on and working on really diligently. I am now the co-chair for the Mental Health Caucus, which is a brand new caucus under the Gold Dome. And we really are working to shepherd through HB 1013 and other important bills around mental health. So that's been my newest leadership opportunity. And then this week I've introduced a few bills. One is called a Second Chance Hemp bill. It'll allow those who have been convicted of misdemeanor crimes and any felony involving drug use, they will be eligible to grow hemp after 10 years. So if you've been convicted for misdemeanor, there's no waiting period. We don't care what that misdemeanor is. Farming is farming. So we want people to be able to farm, and hemp is this new, it's a new opportunity, I think, to really expand farming in Georgia. So that is something we introduced this week. And then the second bill that we also dropped this week, or I guess last week, is a public safety officer bill that will provide for a death benefit to the families of public safety officers who die by suicide while serving our state. My belief, deep belief, is that as a person who was a former EMT, that people who work as public safety officers, whether that's law enforcement, firefighters, or EMTs, that we encounter a lot of trauma, and people really do a great deal and make a great sacrifice to be able to respond to us in our moments of great need as public safety officers. And so I think it's very important that we respond and care for their families and their time of great need in the unfortunate event that an officer dies by suicide. Of course, we're trying to approach this from both sides, right? We want to prevent suicides by addressing our mental health care system. And when people fall through the crack, we want to make sure that we care for their families by allowing them to have access to the death benefit. So those are kind of the two big bills that I've been working on and that we will hope to see advance. I have a hearing on the hemp bill actually on Thursday and hope to have a hearing on the public safety officer death benefit bill in the coming week as well. I think with that, I'll stop there because there are so many questions. And so I'm going to ask my Chief of Staff, Elizabeth, if you could just help me with the moderating and you just tell us the question, and Commissioner Bradshaw and I will answer to the best of our ability.
That sounds great. Well, and thank you so much for such a comprehensive update to kick us off. And I thought I'd also, I know Commissioner Bradshaw already gave a quick intro, but I believe I saw, did your office just release a report today as well? I wanted to uplift that if you wanted to speak on an overall update from your office and from DeKalb County as well.
Sorry, I muted myself. So yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So today, earlier today, my office published our annual report for 2021, highlighting some of the things that we feel like we accomplished last year. It's pretty comprehensive, with hopefully without being too wordy. So if you are already on my email list, then you should have received a copy of it earlier today. And if not, then reach out to Alicia or Carrie, and we'll make sure we get one in your hands lickety split. I won't go into the details contained within, but as you peruse it, and if questions or comments come to mind, then please don't hesitate to reach out to our office, and we'll try to elaborate on what we feel we've accomplished within the last year. And thank you so much, Elizabeth, for the highlight.
Yes, thank you. I thought it was great timing to share that with constituents as well. Top of the list on a lot of folks' minds is thinking about affordable housing in DeKalb County, and there are multiple ways to tackle this issue. And I know it matters a great deal to both the commission and the senator. Perhaps Commissioner Bradshaw, if you can kick us off on
Sure.
What is the county doing in the realm of affordable housing?
So let me start by first saying affordable housing is a very difficult, very thorny issue. There have been attempts to do ordinances in the past that have met with massive resistance. I can tell you that, to be very candid, people are for affordable housing conceptually, but I remember very distinctly a couple of years ago trying to do a zoning for some affordable housing units right across the street from the Kensington MARTA station. And to my mind, I can't think of a better place for affordable workforce housing, however you want to label it, than next to a transit station. But I can also report that the resistance that I got from some of the surrounding communities, and I'm not gonna name them, was significant. So, and that's there. So for whatever reason, there's a stigma attached with affordable housing. I think before we took that vote, in the memo that I published about that, I said maybe we should, move away from that term of art and use the term workforce housing. But for whatever reason, it's conceptually people are for it until it's near them. Having said all of that, within the last few weeks, one of my colleagues on the commission, Commissioner Terry, put forward a resolution to establish an advisory committee of the board to explore, take a deep dive and explore affordable housing within DeKalb County. So what we're going to do internally is work that through our standing committee process. The committee of jurisdiction will be the Planning, Economic Development, and the Community Services Committee, which is chaired by Commissioner Larry Johnson. And he does a very good job in shepherding issues of this magnitude. And we're just going to take our time and study it deeply and hopefully come back to the full board with some recommendations on what we can do in a tangible way to move the needle. But I don't want to leave you with the impression that tackling this is easy, that a solution is right around the corner, ready-made, all teed up. I think that would be doing the people of DeKalb County a disservice to leave that impression. But I will say that it's something that we're all extremely concerned about. And I think this resolution, as we work it through our committee process, will hopefully yield some results that some folks will be able to see and feel in the not too distant future.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Senator or Commissioner Bradshaw. I think that's actually a really great and comprehensive response. And so, Elizabeth, since we have so many questions, let's go ahead and move on.
Sounds good. I'll say another topic you already mentioned is top of mind for many constituents, and that is that of redistricting. And I know that's been a topic in real time at the Capitol. It's being dealt with across the state. And so as it relates to DeKalb, Senator, can you share an update on what's going on?
Sure. Thank you for this. And I know several of you all asked this question in the pre-submitted questions. So let me tell you the posture that we're in. DeKalb County currently has 5 districts and then 2 super districts or at-large districts that are kind of divided in half. The commissioner, Steve Bradshaw, and his 6 friends, his 6 commissioners, they unanimously passed a map for the Board of Commissioners that made some minor changes to the current district. And Senator or Commissioner Bradshaw can speak more to this, but essentially tried to make sure that cities were maintained intact, tried to close up as many of the divided precincts as possible. Nothing of great substance in terms of change was made to the maps they unanimously supported. The House took those maps and essentially put their stamp of approval by sending it through our process that we have under the Gold Dome with the reapportionment offices to make sure that it all worked out. And yesterday, the House, yesterday on Monday, the House voted. And this is a local issue, so it's the local House. So House members who represent DeKalb County signed off on those maps that Commissioner Bradshaw and his friends put together. That was transmitted over to the Senate today, directly to the floor. I took those maps from the House, which are Commissioner Bradshaw's maps, and we have 4 signatures, which is the required number of signatures in order to get those maps on our local consent calendar. So the posture that we're in right now is that on Thursday, those maps will go on the Senate floor for a vote. It's local, so it should not have a problem, but it's Georgia. And we are DeKalb is represented solely by Democrats. And so I don't know what the Republicans have in their back pockets. I don't know. I cannot speak to that. But in terms of what we could do and what we have control on our side, we have the 4 signatures that were required in order to successfully submit the commissioners, the unanimous commissioner votes, which, to be clear, maintains our current form of government, which is 2 super districts and 5 districts. That is the posture that we're in. Everything could change on Thursday, but from where I sit, I believe that is what we're gonna end up having is 5 districts and 2 super districts. So I hope that is clarifying. Commissioner Bradshaw, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks, Senator, for that. I'll add a couple 2 cents. So everything the senator said is correct. So last year, when I was still chair of the board, I led a process whereby my intent was to submit a map that got a consensus vote of this board by the end of the year. And that objective was achieved. That was intentional. That map, as the senator said, was submitted to the State Reapportionment Office for technical review. That review came back with very, very minor changes, came back to the Board of Commissioners for a vote on the amended map, and we approved that last Tuesday. And I'm so pleased to hear that the House went ahead and acted on our map, and the Senate appears to have majority support. Senator, if I heard you correctly, for moving that forward. And as you rightly said, you know, who knows what will happen between now and Thursday, but it is my hope that that stays intact. And then I'll just add my 2 cents with regard to why I like the current construct. First of all, under the current construct, every DeKalb County citizen is represented by 2 county commissioners. You have a district commissioner, you have a super district commissioner, which means you really have 2 avenues of advance, if you will, for, you know, getting your issues resolved. So that's unique. Whoever drew way back when drew the line separating the 2 super districts had the foresight to draw the line north-south rather than east-west, meaning commissioners in both super districts have to seek support in both North DeKalb and South DeKalb. I think that's a good thing. On a more personal note, on zoning issues, zoning matters, I personally like having a colleague with equal jurisdiction to work through zoning issues with. I've had a great relationship with every super district commissioner that I've served with since I've been on this board for the past 5 years. And it's just good from a personal standpoint to work through those issues with a colleague. Next, I think this construct induces more cooperation between commissioners. And the last thing I'll say is that if we were 7 equal districts, I think it would become a little bit easier to retreat into our own silos and just focus, you know, very parochially on the districts that we represent. So, so for those reasons, I like the current construct. That's why I voted for it. One of the 7 that voted for it twice. And, you know, I hope come Thursday, the Senate will take action on what the House did. And this particular issue will be in the rearview mirror. And thanks, Senator, for letting me elaborate on that a little bit.
Absolutely. This has been such an important issue in our county that I'm glad that you were able to add some additional light. I don't think this will be the last time we'll have a conversation about whether or not we maintain this type of governance. So be on the lookout for that. I suspect that there will be additional conversations about that during the charter review process.
Correct.
And perhaps in another phase as well.
Yeah. I'm sorry, forgive me, Senator, forgive me, but that's exactly something of this magnitude should be taken up within the construct of a broader process, and hopefully the charter review process will yield that over time, and we'll see where they end up, you know, whenever their charter expires. But yeah, I think that's the proper construct for dealing with something of this magnitude.
And just so for full transparency, the posture in which I sit is that to me, eliminating the super districts would be like eliminating the Senate and telling me that it's okay, don't worry, we have a House district for you. And that does not feel right. I think there is some real power in us having more than one person that we can talk to when it comes to issues related to the county, in the same way that you have more than one person to talk to when it comes to issues of the state. So that's my posture. That's where I am today. But I look forward to seeing what the charter review comes up with, and I look forward to continued conversations. And while we can have those conversations when we're not under such a strict timeline as we have been. So, Elizabeth, what else?
Yeah, thank you both so much for your words on this important topic. And if I recall from the joint meeting earlier today, I believe the CEO said that the charter review will start work as soon as next month in March. So I know that folks are looking forward to seeing where that can go in the coming months. We had a lot of questions under the umbrella of concerns about crime, around public safety, and too many to individually address here, though we are happy to follow up. But just broadly, from both of your views, what are you doing to address very real public safety concerns in DeKalb County? And whoever wants to take it first, please go for it.
If you, I can take a crack at it first, if you don't mind. So, public safety, in my opinion, is the first responsibility of any government. This is the bottom line. We are short on police officers. We are short on police officers. That is the bottom line. So I mentioned the budget in a broader sense in my earlier comments in anticipation of this question, but the budget that's before us calls for significant enhancements in the area of retention, recruiting, and training for our police officers. And I'm going to hit just a handful of highlights. Number one, this budget calls for funding 72 additional police officer positions. Next, this budget proposes a $5,000 hiring bonus for police officers that have already been post-certified. Next, this makes public safety employees eligible. Employees would qualify for a permanent 6.25% salary increase in lieu of the continuing frontline pay. Next, this budget proposes a $3,000 retention bonus for eligible public safety employees. Next, this budget doubles the county's contribution to the defined contribution retirement accounts for sworn police officers and firefighters from 3% to 6%. And next, it funds a 4% cost of living adjustment for all non-sworn county employees. So all of those proposals are intended to make it easier for us to recruit and retain police officers. As I sit here this minute, I intend to be supportive of every single one of them. And this is in line, this response is in line with what I've heard from citizens and what I've heard from our police leadership. I had a long sit down with our police chief, our excellent police chief Ramos, and her command staff right before the Christmas holiday. And these were the issues that they were saying, sir, these are the things that we need to do. We need to be more robust in attracting, recruitment, and retention of officers. At it comes down to compensation,
year-round hunting of
and
possum
benefits
and raccoons. So like during mating season, if they
Sorry, Commissioner Bradshaw, I happened to mute you. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. Did y'all hear everything else I'd said previously? Okay, good.
Yes.
I don't know how I went on mute automatically, but anyway, that might have been a sign that I need to wrap it up. So bottom line is we're making those investments pursuant to what we've heard from constituents and what we've heard from our police leadership. I intend to vote for all of them next Tuesday, and hopefully the needle will move and it will get the forces in place so we can monitor our flock cameras and monitor our, gunshot detection devices and all the other great ideas that people have that require human beings to monitor them to make them maximally effective. And I'll just pause right there.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Bradshaw. Somebody actually brought this up in the chat, and it's a perfect segue around mental health training for officers, support. We don't want, the quote that she says is, we don't want just more bodies with guns. So I'm happy to report that right now, working through the Senate, we have a co-responder bill. I'm terrible with the numbers, but I think I have this one right. It's 403, Senate Bill 403. Which would authorize county governments and city governments, police agencies to stand up co-responder units. And a co-responder would be a law enforcement officer who would be paired with a certified mental health care provider to respond to mental health requests. So right now there are 5 different kind of pilot programs that are operating across the state that are run under the purview of the Department of Behavioral Health. But this bill will create a pathway for any county, any city, any place of governance to be able to stand up something similar. And so I think that this is an important move and step towards being able to provide for the mental health care needs of our citizens across the state, and DeKalb would certainly be able to set that up if they so chose. Additionally, there will be a new phone number that will be installed. I don't know. We have 911, 988 is coming online. This is actually by federal mandate, but 988 will become an option for people to call in the event that they are experiencing thoughts of suicide. And so this it'll immediately go to the national hotline for suicide prevention. And so this, I think, will be really, really important. The National Hotline for Suicide Prevention has already noted a huge increase, a significant increase in calls over the last 2 years during the pandemic. So this move to make that number a lot more accessible and available will be really helpful. That should go online sometime this year in 2022, if not early 2023. So that's 988. So that's another thing that we have to look forward to. And again, this is an opportunity where hopefully instead of having a guy with a gun respond, you have a mental health care provider who can respond, who can help talk a family member or the person themselves through a process in which they experience a crisis. So those are 2, I think, important things of note from the state level around that issue. Elizabeth?
Yeah, thank you so much. There's so much to say on that topic, but really glad to see it being addressed again at both the county and the state levels. This is a question directed at you, Senator, when the first we received in the pre-submissions. The February 7th SCOTUS decision allowed Alabama's redistricting regulations to stand there by limiting Black representation in that state. Is there anything being done by Georgia Senate Democrats to prevent that here?
Right. So right now, a similar group of people actually who sued in Alabama are suing here in Georgia, challenging our maps because of the ways in which they dilute the Black vote in the state of Georgia. That court case is under review right now, maybe not right now as we speak, but this week. So we're anticipating a preliminary decision to come from the courts by Monday of this coming week. This is totally out of our hands as a Senate. We really are at this point dependent on the court system to intervene. Also, it's important to note that the court case that's in front of them right now is to ask for basically a temporary injunction against these maps so that we can either pause and vote on the map using the maps that we currently have today, or the General Assembly will be called in to redraw new maps. It's something for temporary. The reality is we are going to be fighting these maps in court for many, many years. This is going to be an ongoing process, but the court case that will be decided here in the next few days, and this was true in Alabama too, is for temporary relief. So it doesn't really if we look at Alabama and what happened in Alabama, it doesn't give us a whole lot of hope that something different would happen for us. The judge who ruled in Alabama basically said May 24th is too fast. It's coming too soon to have to be able to redraw maps. And we have the same primary date as Alabama. So I don't know what the judge will conclude. Only he knows that, or she knows that in their own hearts. But that certainly what happened in Alabama does not actually bode well for us, but we'll see. We'll stand by. Right now on our side, in terms of what the Senate is doing, we're continuing to push back against new bills that further suppress voting. We're continuing to try to do. We're also introducing bills that try to roll back some of the things that happened last year in SB 202. So that's kind of our posture, is to fight in the General Assembly where we're located and trust that the courts ultimately will turn towards justice to make sure that our maps do not dilute Black voices and Black votes.
Thank you for that. One question that came up in the chat, and I want to address some for our live viewers. Thank you all again for tuning in, and feel free to keep using the chat throughout. We're monitoring it actively and noting everything down. Somebody asked, will our community be negatively impacted by the 2020 census? Given that that was the beginning of the pandemic, concerned that many people did not complete the census. Commissioner or Senator, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, we ran a pretty robust census process here in the county that was led by Commissioner Larry Johnson. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what the exact numbers were, but I know that in every instance when the committee that he put together came back to us for additional funding to make sure there are enough people to do the counts and they had everything they need, we approved every single one of them. So we feel like the census process was good. I know that COVID was an impediment across the board in a lot of census, but DeKalb County's population is up, and that should translate into more funds for us down the road. So I feel like the census process was conducted in a very professional and proper manner.
That's reassuring to hear. Thank you, Commissioner. Follow-up question related to something we addressed earlier, Senator Jackson, around mental health. Do we have adequate mental health benefits available to help the homeless?
So for those of you who do not know what I do professionally, when I'm not at the Senate, I am an Episcopal priest who serves a community of people who sleep outside in downtown Atlanta. So day in and day out, I am with people who are experiencing homelessness. And the short answer to that is no, we don't have enough mental health care resources available to people who both are housed or unhoused. And that really is what we're seeking to try to begin to address. I want to be honest and transparent that HB 1013, as great as it is, and despite being a full 74 pages long, does not actually solve the problem completely. It took Georgia years of neglect and neglecting our mental health care system to get in this place, and it will take us years to get out of this place. But it is a HB 1013 and a few other bills that we have are beginning to seek to address that. There also, I will say that there are a number of nonprofits who have been attempting to stand and fill in the gap where our social services have failed. And yet still there are not enough services right now. So this is why part of why I'm chairing the mental health caucus. It's because this issue is really near and dear to me. And because I know that this is a heavy lift that we'll need to continue to work on for years to come.
Commissioner, do you have any other thoughts on that issue?
And homelessness in general is a very, very challenging, very difficult issue. Here in the county, we have a community development department, which is our conduit to federal funds, that has a division that is solely focused on homelessness. And they do the homeless counts, and they're responsible for standing up the warming shelter centers when it's cold. And they're responsible for engaging with several nonprofits to provide home space for folks that are homeless. But I think, as the senator was saying, it's not enough. I mean, I personally contributed money, significant money out of my budget to assist community development in that effort. It's not enough. So we just have to keep working it. I can tell you, I spent over the summer, I was out in Oregon, and I was stunned. I was stunned at the amount of homeless people I saw in and around downtown Portland. I mean, it was stunning to me how many tent cities there were in and around the Portland area. So it's a national problem. That's probably a wholly unsatisfactory answer at the moment, except to say it's something that's top of mind, and we're just going to keep working it.
Well, thank you. And thank you both for your hard work on this issue. As you said, we just have to keep pushing. I saw one in the chat, and thank you all for engaging in the chat. We are logging everything. I saw a follow-up question. I believe this is a follow-up to the census remarks. Does that mean we get money for adequate streetlights, road repairs, parks, and so forth?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
please.
Forgive me, Elizabeth.
No, exactly.
Go ahead and
Thank
finish
you,
the question.
Commissioner. No, you were the perfect person to answer this. I was thinking you could walk through what this means in terms of getting money. So thank you.
Yeah, so in the macro sense, yes, it means more money, but with regard to specifics, so in DeKalb County, the county is responsible for funding our parks, and it just so happens that in this year's budget proposal, there's an additional $3 million allocated for our parks. In terms of road repair, that's been addressed over the last few years with SPLOST funds. So special purpose local option sales tax, to which the bulk of that money was dedicated toward road repairs. And I forget how many hundreds of miles of roads have been repaired in the last 3 or 4 years, but it's been significant. But obviously I drive on the roads like everybody else does. It hasn't taken care of all of it. So hopefully this SPLOST is up for renewal in 2023. So hopefully that'll be renewed. Hopefully we'll be able to make some more modifications to have a little more latitude with that money. And that process will continue to repair the roads. In terms of streetlights, that's usually done through a petition process in communities. My office can help walk anybody through how that process takes place. But the bottom line is we're attacking across all of those fronts, and we'll have hopefully more money to do that by virtue of our increased population.
Thank you so much for that. Y'all keep it coming. This is great. There's a really active chat going on. Going back to a little bit earlier, this is somewhat of a curveball, but speaking of hemp, somebody is wondering if you support the legalization of marijuana.
So was that to me, Elizabeth? Yeah, so the answer is yes. And I mean, Commissioner Bradshaw, you may be able to speak to this too, but in our meeting with the commissioner, Commissioner Marita Johnson, on her list of legislative priorities included this is almost in the weeds, so I'm trying to explain this very simply as possible. So right now, cities, individual cities, like for instance, Clarkston, can prosecute or dispose of any arrest related to marijuana under 1 ounce as a city ordinance. They can just issue a ticket. In fact, I think Clarkston's rule is it's a $50 ticket and carry on. Counties are not able to do that. So DeKalb County, if a DeKalb County police officer stops somebody and they're in possession of 1 ounce or less, they have to go through the state courts. And so Commissioner Marita Johnson, as a part of one of her legislative priorities, has asked those of us in the General Assembly to try to pass a law that would allow counties to intervene in that way. So that's something we're looking at, how we can do that logistically, because the county doesn't have a court to process it. So it's a little complicated, but so, and then from my side, the legalization of marijuana is an important criminal justice reform piece that we need to take for. If we want to have fewer people in jail, we need to go ahead and make that change. And we also need to, at the same time, invest in resources for substance abuse disorders. So if we're going to legalize more substances, for instance, alcohol is a perfectly legal drug that we have on the streets. If we're going to legalize more, we need to make sure that we tax those products so that we can adequately fund for substance use disorders, so that folks, if they end up in that situation, will be able to get the care that they need, while acknowledging that many people will never need that kind of treatment at all. So that's what I support, is kind of this both and. Let's decriminalize it, and then let's tax it.
Yeah, so just to piggyback, I've been supportive of Commissioner Davis Johnson's legislative proposal on the 1 ounce of marijuana usage every time she's introduced it. So so hopefully that'll get addressed at some point in the near future.
And our great clerk private messaged me to note that our DA Sherry Boston, is actually not prosecuting those cases currently in DeKalb County. So that's the DA that we have currently, and I hope we can keep her as long as possible. But as long
I second that motion.
Right, we want to keep her. I mean, she's really, really great and talented, and maybe we probably should share her with others. But as long as we have her, those cases probably will not be prosecuted. But we do want to go ahead and change the laws just in case we get a different DA who is not as sensitive to this issue. We want to make sure that DeKalb County has the ability to issue tickets instead.
On a very related note, what just popped up in the chat related to cash bail. Are there any efforts working on that at either level at this point in time?
I haven't seen any proposals yet here in the county to address that, but the cash bail system has definitely got some problems and needs to be reformed. So, I certainly need to do a little more homework on it myself, but hopefully, one of my colleagues will make that proposal in the near term, and if not, I may do it.
Yeah, and I will say, unfortunately, on the Dome side, the Capitol side, we are actually in the posture of having to play defense right now. So there was some really good work that was done under the governorship of Nathan Deal that allowed for more people to be able to get a signature bond, which is essentially to kind of sign yourself out, promising that you will show up for court. He was able to expand that list and allow for more people to escape the cash bail system. But we are now under a current group of people who are very much invested in making that list smaller and smaller. And so we are playing defense to try to kill those types of bills. Most recently on Friday, a bill was introduced that would make all felonies, and a felony, mind you, is just anything that you could be charged for more than 1 year. All felonies, they would be required to have to go through a superior court judge. So they wouldn't be able to get an immediate signature bond, which fundamentally would probably enhance the cash bond system. So we're fighting that bill and many others. I wish we could be offensive in trying to dismantle it, but right now we've just got to fight back bad things.
And just if I may piggyback on that, something Senator Jackson just mentioned about some criminal justice reform that was done under the previous governor. One of the good things that came out of that were accountability courts or diversion courts, right? They're here in DeKalb County. I've personally, contributed money to those courts out of my own reserve funds. I think the three are the drug treatment court, the veterans treatment court, and the mental health court. And it's all designed to keep people from going to jail, right? Your program set up to keep people from going to jail. And obviously the veterans treatment court is something that's very close to my heart. I'd love to see all of the accountability courts funded at a much larger rate, and I'll continue to be supportive of them with the limited amount of funds that I have, but I think those were good reforms.
Thank you both. This has come up both in the pre-submitted and in the chat in various ways. But if you can just speak to a little bit about the process and the proposals for cityhood and what may or may not be happening in that regard. I know it's an issue that keeps coming up, and some folks are wondering about that.
Sure. So thank you for that. I know there are a number of questions. So what I can say is that there's been no bill introduced in the Senate or the House as it relates to cityhood in DeKalb County. There are other bills. I think you all have heard probably ad nauseum about a bill to secede and create a Buckhead city. That bill, we understand and believe, will probably die a painful and slow death under the hand and the foot of the Speaker of the House. I'm being funny, but no, I do. We understand that the Buckhead secession movement probably has stalled out for this year, but I do not have any bills for cityhood in DeKalb County. None have been brought to me. So I do not foresee us having a city created during this or the opportunity for one to be created during this legislative session.
And if I may, I'm really happy to hear Senator Jackson say that. Just so I'm crystal clear, I'm opposed to the creation of any new cities in DeKalb County. I don't know how much plainer I can be. We don't need any more cities. We've got 12 cities as of now, 13 if you count the portion of Atlanta that's in DeKalb. The breakout is roughly 60% of the county is still unincorporated. About 40% is municipalized. That's probably about the right balance. But I was opposed to Greenhaven from the moment of its inception. That hasn't changed. Maybe the name has changed, but that hasn't changed. And as far as I'm concerned, speaking for myself, I don't think my position on that is likely to change. So that there's not a bill that's been dropped pursuant to that is welcome news to my ears, and I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to, so I think Clerk Deborah DeBerry, if you're still on the call, we do have a question about the backup in the Superior Court. I'm wondering if you might want to answer that question. If not, perhaps Commissioner Bradshaw can, but I wanted to give, since we have the clerk here, I wanted to give her a chance to respond. She may not still be with us.
Yes, I am. Sure. And the question was about the backlogs.
Yes.
Okay. We reopened in May 10th of 2021. And fortunately, we don't have, number one, as significant a backlog as other counties, because we utilized our virtual in-jail court pleas. And then when we started jury trials up again in July of 2021, the law was passed allowing for more case types to be accused rather than going through the grand jury process. So that has helped with the backlog. We just received an ARP grant that is through the state and the Supreme Court. It's $2 million, which is far less than what we need to add additional courtrooms, court divisions, that meaning staff, judges, to address that. But in the meantime, and recently, I will add, the COVID, the Omicron outbreak significantly hit the courthouse. The DA's office had to shut down through the end of January. We were holding on by our fingernails. So to keep jurors safe and court staff and any citizen coming into the courthouse, we're only holding 2 courtrooms currently per floor for jury trials. And that's where the backlog, this grant is very specific, highly restrictive, more so than the federal restrictions or criteria for this grant. And we can only use these funds for serious felonies. And those where we have aggressive scheduling going on. Judges are working late at night. We're working, if a jury goes out, we'll stay late into the night to wait on a verdict. If it means coming in, if the jurors are amenable, we come back on the weekends to address the backlog. Does that answer the question?
I think so. That seemed very comprehensive. If it didn't, you all can speak up, but thank you so much. I'm really glad to have your expertise on this call.
Sure.
Elizabeth, are there any other additional questions?
Yes, I also just wanted to uplift what I just wrote in the chat, which is that we are getting toward the end of time. And I wanted to make sure if anybody has lingering thoughts or something burning on their hearts to go ahead and place that in the chat. We will try to get to everything, and if not, happy to do follow-up, of course. Yeah, so if I go back to what was presented in the chat, this may require additional follow-up, but there were a couple of concerns about pad splits and rooming houses, or some terms that popped up. And if either the commissioner or senator has any updates on how that's being addressed, on what can be done in that regard, please do share.
I don't have any comment on that at the moment.
Okay.
I'm just not well versed.
Sure. So I think this probably will be the most controversial issue under the Gold Dome that is not partisan in this legislative session. Is the question of how do we both address issues of affordable housing while also giving attention to issues of rent and what neighborhoods can have renters in them or not have renters in them, and what do we do with the fact that over 40% of the houses that were purchased in Georgia this year were purchased, or last year were purchased by investors who were only interested in rent and raising the rent prices. This is quite a layered issue that we are addressing, and there are no partisan lines involved in this at all. This isn't even a rural versus urban divide when it comes to how we address this issue. This is a statewide issue that has great conflict around it, and I don't know the answer to it. I don't know where we're going to land on it, but certainly all of us as legislators are aware of continuing and rising concerns about the creation of more and more rental properties, the dividing and creating of rooming houses, and its impact on neighborhoods. That being said, I think I probably will always err on the side of people need a place to live. And I want to create a system where we can do that and where people have neighborhoods that feel safe. And so I think that we can probably do both of those things, so we can have safe neighborhoods and have places for everyone to live. We've just got to figure out the kind of the eye of the needle, thread the needle to get there. So I will say the previous bills around pad split, which would have changed the definition of family, those are not being considered at this time. It's just a whole new way that we're trying to address the issue. And again, I have no crystal ball.
Yes, thank you for that. Latest in the chat, I'm wondering how a voter can prove they're a valid voter if they're being accused of fraud with SB B202. Maybe Senator Jackson can answer this question as it relates to SB 202, which was for the benefit of everyone. This is the voter suppression omnibus bill that was passed and nailed through the Senate and the House in 2021.
Right. So the Secretary of State's office has an investigative division, small department, a few people is really what it is, who investigate all claims of fraud. And so I guess in the event that somebody was accused of of committing fraud, I guess it depends on the type of fraud, but it sounds like to me it's one of question of being a valid voter. Then the Secretary of State would be responsible for investigating that. And certainly the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, whatever you find yourself affiliated with, both of those organizations would stand ready to assist any voter in validating themselves. I have no doubt about that. If you find yourself in that position, please reach out to me as your legislator. I'm happy to help you navigate that issue. I think that these accusations may come up more and more. And so we just have to be ready to deal with it. But there are certainly lawyers who are standing by to help us assist to navigate these things.
And also just to piggyback, the county has a voter registration and elections office with folks in there who are experts in this space. So that would be a good resource too.
So I see Daniel Walker has a question about what services are being considered to be kept by a county and services allowed for new cities. So thank you for that question. It's kind of for people who are not familiar with the whole system of creating new cities. Basically in Georgia, as the law has it today, you have to take on 3 services, and it's out of a whole list of services. Most new smaller cities who have very little resources typically take on zoning, parks, and maybe trash, and they contract out with somebody to actually pick up their trash. So 3 services is the only thing that required. There are conversations in the background about how we might make some shifts around that, and if it might be better to go ahead and assign certain services to the county, right? So for instance, counties do a really great job of water management and sewage management. And in fact, I would argue that we wouldn't want individual cities over that, because it's such a large system, right? We have the watershed, the DeKalb County watershed that provides water for Tucker to Pine Lake to Avondale Estates, whatever city you're in, it doesn't matter. It's the DeKalb watershed. I think that that's probably a service that the county needs to maintain. Also, by the way, we have some of the cleanest drinking water in the entire nation. So if anybody's worried about that, that's good news that we received from the CEO today. So that's just one example. It's a longer conversation that will continue to have. Senator Harrell and I have actually been doing a lot of research around this particular issue because we understand that cityhood is going to continue to be an issue. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we protect all citizens, and to make sure that the services that counties can provide and that they provide well, that they are maintained, and that the county isn't defunded or underfunded as a result of creating these new cities and taking services away. So please stay tuned. It is a much more complicated issue, but we are certainly working on it really diligently.
Yeah, and if I may, so to what the senator said, yes, under current law, city only has to perform 3 services. Normally, a new city picks the cheapest services to provide, and they contract out the rest. Well, guess where they contract most of it from? they contracted from DeKalb County via an intergovernmental agreement. So, you know, I'm opining a little bit here, but if it were me, if I wanted to form a city, let's call it Bradshawville, okay? The thing I would want the most would be police services, right? Somebody could argue that police that are closer can be more responsive, can answer our calls better, can patrol our streets better, than can do all the things that we want in that function. But new cities don't stand up their own police forces. They contract that service from DeKalb County. So I'm sitting here wondering to myself, what's, you know, if you're not going to provide that, what's the upside? I'm baffled that people think you can draw a line around a certain piece of land, which is county land, call it something different, and find yourself in nirvana. It's just not, it just doesn't happen that way. So, and I'll apologize for opining, but you know, I know this is going to keep coming back and forth and back and forth. You know, if it were me, if I were king of the world, I'd put a moratorium on new cities for a while we all take a deep dive and study this thing, because I will say what I've said before in public meetings, that right now the way we set up cities is like the Wild Wild West, and that's got to stop.
Yeah, I mean, the portion that I would absolutely echo is that we need to make sure that we systematize how cities are created, so that it's fair and equitable across the board for both those who are trying to stand up new cities and for those who will be outside of those city lines and left to hold the taxes and the debt that those new cities.
Pension obligations and bond obligations, all of that stuff has to be considered.
All of that.
Forgive the interruption, Senator.
No, you're fine. So I just, these things are complicated, and I want to acknowledge that there are really dedicated citizens in DeKalb County who are very committed, who want to have a city. And I don't want to diminish that desire. That's not what I'm here for. I want to acknowledge that there's some real problems that they're trying to address. And what I'm saying simply is that we need to make sure we do this carefully and well, and it has to be done in a way that's systematized across the state. It cannot be done so willy-nilly, or as the commissioner would say, like the Wild Wild West, because it ends up hurting people and we're not answering all the very important questions that need to be answered around what happens to those who get drawn out of that city, or even those who get drawn into the city. So I just want to be really careful about acknowledging the hard work that our citizens have been putting into trying to find solutions to their very real problems.
Thank you both for that. And we do, after this, need to move into closing remarks from each of you. We'd love to hear some final thoughts. But before that, I will offer, this is a result of the questions in the chat and also from our joint meeting today. Economic development is another issue that is top of mind for folks. You know, how can DeKalb be this thriving place with new businesses and those opportunities? And that's also been an interest of those pursuing cityhood. And Senator or Commissioner, if you'd like to speak to the current economic development efforts, it sounded like the CEO also had some great news to share on that front. And also, yeah, so please just take that.
Yeah, so I'll address that real briefly. The number one thing that has been accomplished in recent days to enhance economic development is the modification of our consent decree, which allows for sewer capacity access. You know, that was a long, hard-fought struggle. I give CEO Thurman tremendous credit for leading us through that process. And frankly, we lost basically 3 years looking retrospectively through all of the, let's just say, things that were going on in DeKalb County once upon a time that cost us time. Well, a judge has signed that modification. We've got 7.5 years to bring the system up to speed. And I think that will help in the macro sense. A little more granular, I think we're finally poised to make a leap forward on that front, because we've got stability now in what I call our two economic development facing agencies. And those are the DeKalb Chamber and Decide DeKalb, which is our development authority. There have been some leadership challenges and instability looking backwards over the last couple of years. I think those issues have been resolved, and now we're in a position to move economic development forward in DeKalb County.
That's wonderful to hear. And you know, it kind of goes back to those fundamental services. You got to get water and sewer right before anything else can happen, is one of the messages the CEO really brought home today. So thank you everyone for joining. Please note, if your questions in the chat, we have it. We'll be in touch. This has been an awesome time here on Zoom. Ideally, we can be back in person one day, but for now, Zoom is it. And yes, I'd like to invite closing remarks from the commissioner and the senator. Please close us out. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to afford my wonderful colleague the last word. So I'll just say thank you. Thanks to the senator for looping me in. Very humbled and very grateful to be afforded this opportunity, and very appreciative of my relationship professionally and friendship with Senator Jackson. I don't mind saying that I supported her election, and she's lived up to my every expectation as a colleague in public service. So I just thank you for the work you're doing on our behalf under the Gold Dome. And just in the interest of full disclosure, Senator Jackson is my senator. As I'm her commissioner, she is my senator, and I'm very proud of that. And once again, I'll thank our staffs for their support. And most of all, I thank the citizens for their engagement tonight. You know, it's a Tuesday night. Everybody's got other stuff that they can be doing, but you're here. So we appreciate it. This feedback is always helpful. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to serve. And I yield to my colleague.
Well, I simply want to begin by thanking Commissioner Bradshaw for taking the time to join me on this town hall. A special thanks to his staff and to my staff as well, to Elizabeth Wilkes for moderating this conversation, for all of your background genius that helps makes these types of town halls happen. I want to thank you publicly for that. And thank you, citizens. I have been so proud to be able to represent DeKalb County and to have citizens who are willing to get on calls like this, who call my offices and tell me how to vote on things. I am very, very grateful to serve a community that's paying attention, that's engaged, and that cares about the issues that are in front of us. And so please continue to reach out. I read the emails. I do get the voicemails. There's somebody, I don't know if you're on the call, but there's somebody who wants me to vote no about possums and being able to hunt them all year round. If you're on this call, let me know and I'll have an offline conversation with you about that. But I love that I live in a county where there are people who are paying attention even to the possums. So it's my great honor and privilege to serve you all. Thank you all so much. Please know that I invite you to continue to reach out as you need to. We are happy to help, and I am up for re-election. So please look in May if we have elections in May, but please look for my name on the ballot come May. I would absolutely welcome your vote if my name is on your ballot. With that, thank you all so much for being here. If you're the possum person, please stay on. I want to holler at you. But everyone else, thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.